of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire. In darkest nights. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. Oh, 'cause all my life you have been faithful. If God has been faithful to you, just lift your hands and say, all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I'm able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Can we say that one more time? All my life you have been faithful. There's not a time you haven't been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am made, here's what I'll do. I will sing of the goodness of God. Say, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, 'cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Oh, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Oh Lord, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Can we say your goodness is running after? It's running after me. If that's your heart's desire, say your goodness. It's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender to you. I give you everything. Oh, your goodness, it's running after me. One more time, everybody say your goodness. It's running after me. And it never runs out. Your goodness, it's running after me. It's chasing me down. With my life laid down, I surrender now. And I give you everything. Oh, your goodness is running after me. Because all my life you have been faithful. Yeah, and all my life you have been so good. So with every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Everybody say, all my life you have been faithful. Yes, you have. All my life you have been you've been so good. With every breath that I am made, I will sing of the goodness of God. Hallelujah. Bless your name, Jesus.
Welcome back this week So glad you are joining us for part 2 of our 2-part annual marriage panel. Let's jump right back in to where we left off last week. So I want to address this to the men. And think about the length of time that you've been married now, right? And all the experience you've had in marriage over that time. If you were to meet yourself when you were 20 years old, the you now was talking to the you at 20 years old, or the you now was talking to the you at 21 years old, based upon what you've learned about marriage and what you've learned about relationships, what advice would the you now give the younger you? Or the young man. The young man is like, he comes up to you. It's one of your football players. You know, he just got done playing football for senior high, and he graduated 3 years ago, and he's like, Coach, I think I want to get married. You know, what are you saying to those young guys coming up now, or to your younger self, that you've learned about relationships, about marriage, about this whole issue of union and covenant? What jumps out for you? I'm going to start with Mr. Purvis.
I will say, don't take things for granted. Don't take your spouse for granted. And capture the moments. Even though you say, well, I'm young, you think, okay, you really don't think about it because you're going to live forever. You know, you kind of have that mentality, and you just take time and events for granted. And as you get older, you realize you missed the opportunities to celebrate those good times, and also to make your spouse feel that she's appreciated, make your wife feel she's appreciated a little more when you're younger. When you get older, you're a little more seasoned, so it's not as difficult, but when you're younger, sometimes I think you just tend to take her and those moments for granted, and they're not always promised.
Okay. Jason, not ready yet? All right. Kyle, what's the older you say to the younger you, Kyle?
So I'm sitting here, I was like, man, right? But I guess I would say the same things I say to couples now who I know are getting married, right? That marriage trumps everything. Like, it's covenant, it's forever. And so, when it comes to Christian covenant marriage, if y'all going to be in this, you can be miserable or you can be happy. So work to be happy. Be intentional about it. And communication is so extremely important. And I think that people need to understand what communication means, because it's not just talking and it's not just listening. It's also responding. And I think that one of the struggles is that if I tell you what I need and you tell me what you need, but then we don't do anything with that information, all we did was chat to each other, and it doesn't matter. And so responding to and understanding, because one of my favorite things about our marriage, and we say this often, and people always like, what? We've never had an argument. You know, that statement is true. In our entire relationship, we've never had an argument, ever. And but that's because our communication styles are what they are. And we realize that part of that is just straight our personalities. But the other part is just the intentionality of, when you tell me something about yourself, I'm going to process it, and then I'm going to change whatever I need to change and adjust whatever I need to adjust for her. So I think adjustment, I'm going to stop talking because this list can get really long. Be willing to adjust, be willing to make transitions, communicate well, and not idolizing anyone else above, or any other situation above my marriage, because when it comes down to it, my brother's going to be gone. You know, family comes in for the weekend, creates chaos, they're going to leave, but what am I going to do with the aftermath? You know, my friend's advice, that person over there, when it comes to none of that matters if I got to quit the job and walk away, because, you know, she's here. And so that's my priority.
Yeah, you know, that's just a good word. And I would, you know, I'm from the school, like, if I could say I'm happy without a month of not arguing, you know, so that's awesome that y'all get to operate in that. But what I would say, to add to that, Kyle, around the issue of covenant, because I think people don't recognize it, and I'll speak to this, to the question that came up about blended families. It's important that people realize this then becomes the premier relationship on earth in your life. So, you know, your spouse come before your mama and before your parents. And if one of you have children, the spouse comes before your baby. And that's oftentimes couples get in so much trouble. Even couples that didn't have children before they got married, then they get pregnant, they have a baby, and then all of a sudden they're not loving on each other because they too busy loving on the baby. And they've got to recognize that the number one relationship, and I see that with couples so often, they get in trouble because they have not forsaken everyone else. They're not cheating with another man or another woman, but they still letting mama tell them what to do. Or they're still letting their boys drive the decisions they make on their marriage. And I think that's key for people to realize this is major, because this person goes from not being in your life at all to number one, of course, next to God. So I think that's an important key. Eric?
Yeah, if the older me were to have a conversation with the younger me, I would tell the younger me to keep writing the letters. Okay, now that don't make any sense, but when we started dating, Keisha started writing letters. I never had a girlfriend, okay? Really had a girlfriend at all. So when we started dating in high school, she would give me a letter. And the expectation is, you need to write me back. Well, I really don't like to talk, so writing, really? Come on. So, I agonize over these letters every time. So I finally get something down. I try to get a 2-pager. I get it to her. She reads it, and the next thing you know, she passes me in the hall. She gets me another letter. And I'm like, okay. So obviously I'm gonna have to keep doing this. And so after we got married, I stopped. I probably stopped before then. I stopped writing letters. And it just so happened when she went away this weekend, I said, okay, I'm gonna write her 2 letters. And these are letters for her to read before she goes to bed. The very last thing she does. So I wrote one for Saturday night, wrote one for Sunday night.
Oh man, get you up in the game here.
But don't get too excited because because I labeled the letters wrong, and she actually opened up Sunday night first. But anyway, she got it right. She stopped reading and opened up the right one. But what her response was to me was that I hadn't done that in 30 years. Wow. And it really let her know what was on my heart and what was in my mind, and it really fed her. And so I said to myself, I need to keep this going. I should never stop in the first place. So I would tell the younger me to keep doing the things that filled her up, to get her, keep doing the things to fill her up now, because she needs it. So
that is so good. All right, Miss Keisha, got you some letters. So ladies, same question to you all. Oh, that's right. We skipped Jason. Oh yes, we need to hear this wisdom. I'm so sorry, Jason. Oh, that's right, Pastor Stephanie.
No,
Speak up for your man.
That was a deep question. It took me a while, and I'm still digging, but really realizing that. So if I'm talking to myself, all right, after we had an opportunity to meet and we dated for a while, understand that this is the one. So you need to be putting yourself in place to give her all the things she needs, all the things she wants, putting yourself in good credit, all those type of things. So I really would just build, remind myself to make sure that I'm doing the right things, that we can have a positive future.
That's a good word. Build some credit.
Yes, make
build
those
some
deposits,
credit.
sir.
Yeah, man. So real quick, so we have to be careful that we don't bankrupt the relationship. Maybe couples out here struggling with infidelity. You could have been great for 5 years, but that one act bankrupted the relationship. So you can't go to bed tapping her on the shoulder because it's nothing in the bank. You've been bankrupt everything. And so you got to do those things necessary to build up the relationship again. I think Jason is spot on, because I think a lot of times we want to withdraw, but we haven't been making deposits. And so I would say to couples that are watching this, ask yourself, what are you currently actively doing to make deposits in your relationship? And whether you've been married for 5 years or 50 years, you need to keep making deposits.
Or 5 months.
And
So,
Angela, may I make
Yes,
one
you may.
caveat? So, not against what you just said, Pastor. I think that's good. But I want to put a point of clarification on that idea that Danielle and I have never had an argument. All right? That does not mean that we have never disagreed. And I think that for us and then with marriage, it comes down to how do you deal with the disagreement. So for us, like I said, part of our personalities is that we're analytical thinkers, we're overthinkers, we're communicators, we talk things out. So we never blow up, which would then hinder our ability to communicate effectively. So I don't want people out there thinking, oh, is marriage possible that you don't ever have a disagreement? And that's how it should be. Like, no, we have things that we think differently about. But for us, it never gets to a point of arguing because in my mind, arguing would shut down. And if she ever came to the house and was yelling at me, I'd be like, first of all, who is this? Right? Like, who is this person? So I think that's just important to a caveat or additional point to understand.
thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now, ladies, your turn. So I'm going to start with Ms. Tinger, and then I'm going to move to Danielle, and then Keisha, and then Stephanie to close out this question. So same question to you. What would you now, after having been married for 33 years in your case, say to the younger you before you got married?
I would say my famous quote from my aunt was, start out like you can hold out. So I try to remember the things that attracted us together, the things we did at the beginning of our marriage, keeping myself together, always, trying to do things that he would like, the things I used to do. I don't try to front. When we first got married, he knows, everybody knows, I did not cook. I'm not a great cook now, but he understood that. He's a wonderful cook, and we get along wonderfully with that. But I just try to do the things now that I promised that I would do when we first got married.
So for the people in the back, Ms. Tinger said, ladies, keep yourself together. Just going to leave that out there because I think we don't always do that. So I'm going to leave that go.
That's not all she said, but I see, we see what you latched on to, sir, okay? Danielle.
If I was to say anything to even girls who are dating or looking for someone to date, I would say a big thing for me was to if you date someone that you can follow, that you trust to lead you. If you're dating somebody and they're leading you astray, you probably need to think twice about marrying them. And because once you're married, you're in it. But when you're dating, you still have an out. Mm-hmm. And I say, if they're leading you astray and doing things that aren't what you need to be doing, then you need to get out of your however you're dating. And also along with that, marry somebody that you can follow, but also somebody who will support you. Like when me and Kyle got married, I am almost 4 years older than Kyle. I was established in my career, whereas Kyle was fresh out of college right before we got married. So it was kind of like a flip. I was already working, but Kyle wasn't you make more money than me, how dare you? He was very much like, I'm supporting you, we're supportive of each other, and so definitely somebody that you can follow and somebody that supports you in your dreams as well.
Amen. I think that's such a great word because too often we date people that we feel like we can change, and that's not the right approach, right? So you need to already see the character and know whether or not that's something that you can align with. So thank you so much for that. Pastor Keisha.
Talking to my younger self, I would teach me that there's a difference between being a strong woman and a woman of strength. See, I grew up where women couldn't depend on men. So you were strong. You had to handle business. You had to lead. You had to do things. If you wanted stuff done, do it. And I brought that into our marriage. And so initially it was, I had never seen beyond my grandparents like a healthy marriage. So I was like, if we want it done, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I know I'm going to get it done. And so what was happening is I came in being a strong woman. And afterwards, I start learning, especially when God started pulling my heart toward ministry, that I had to shift that from being a strong woman to a woman of strength. Because a woman of strength can surrender and a woman of strength can submit. And so when I turned my strength into becoming a helpmeet and allowing my husband to lead, because you really do have to allow them to have that place and let him lead. I learned that I wanted to be led. I learned that I wanted to follow. I learned that I needed that safe place and secure place, that I could be vulnerable, that I could just be Keisha and not have to get things done and handle stuff. So for me, it would be willing to put all that strongness and all that I gotta do, I have to do, I gotta be on the back burner and cultivate a strength through God and learn how to be the woman of strength. Because when you do that, we talk about how the husband is the head and we get all twisted with that. I learned that he's the head, but I'm the neck. So if the neck is doing what it's supposed to do, then the head is leading, and we're all protected. We're under that umbrella of protection. And anything with two heads is a monster. So learning how to come into that place of submission to him, which is God's order, and surrender that strongness to cultivate strength.
Such a great word, especially today when you have so many women who are single for longer in their lifetime, and they've learned to be independent and stand on their own. And so learning to make that adjustment to be able to surrender and submit to other leadership. Thank you so much. Pastor Stephanie.
Pastor's about to forget me again. I saw you put your mic up to your mouth.
I got you, girl, this time. I got you.
I would say don't be afraid of being different, and celebrate our differences. I was so focused on how different we are that I was trying to make Jason, I was trying to make us the same person. Instead of becoming one is a different journey of being the same. And so I've learned that our differences, the Lord put us together for that, because if we were the same person, we would never be home. Our van would always be in the wind. Our house would be full of people, right? And so our differences really define who we are, what our marriage is, and to celebrate what is there. I was so focused in the beginning of what was not. And I think I made Jason feel like I will never get to the bar you keep raising. This is not who I am. What I'm not doing, what I don't say, where I am not. Instead of celebrating what he is and being thankful for that. And so I've learned I don't want anyone cheering louder for my man than I do. And so, but it has to be a cheer and not a nag. And so I just, I want to celebrate all that he is, because he's a lot.
That's so good. I loved what you said about becoming one is not becoming the same. That's really, really good. And then nobody needs to celebrate him more than you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I was actually going to leave this for the end of our time together, and we have one more question before we wrap out, because we're almost an hour already. But I think your statement, Stephanie, kind of has led me to want to say it. Because Keisha referenced it, Angela referenced this whole issue of not their husbands not having wives, and that can be easily misunderstood. And I think oftentimes what happens in marriage is that we are critical of other people's situations because we don't recognize that their spouse is giving them what they need to be complimented. And so, I'm a visionary, right? So my head is always in the clouds. So without a woman who has feet on the ground, I'm no good to humanity. I'm just not, because I'm all up in here, right? So then people could easily, and I'm not trying to put you on blast, because you are looking mighty fine right now, so I'm not trying to put you on blast, but she not really trying to put on any makeup, right? And she not really trying to keep up with chicks who trying to do all this other, that's not her, right? And so it'd be easy for people to criticize that and be like, pastor need to have a woman, da-da-da-da. No, I need a woman that can compliment me to help me become successful in who God has made me. And so I think, not putting words in your mouth, Keisha, but I think that's the reference, right? So I don't want people walking away with, well, what did she mean by that? What did she mean by that? And I don't want, and to your point, Stephanie, it's important that people recognize each person needs what they need to compliment them, right? And so, I don't need a woman who can cook. I just don't, I need a woman who can count money, right? Because I'm going to blow it all, right? I'm going to waste it all. You know, and she doesn't necessarily need a man that can count money, but she could benefit from one that can cook, right? And so we have to recognize. So what I would say to couples is that do y'all. You know, do the person that's going to compliment you that you can really do your life with. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in based upon what you just shared. So either can be couple picking or individual. I'm going to throw off a couple topics. Whatever topic you want to grab and whatever you want to say about that topic. Okay? So y'all can do it as a couple or y'all can each do it individually. Here are the topics. In-laws, intimacy. That's the PG. Sex. Boundaries, even though we touched on a little bit of that already. Finances. Differences of opinion. Decision making. And another person trying to push up on your spouse. Right. So, in-laws, intimacy, boundaries, finances, decision making, differences of opinion, another person trying to push up on your man or woman. Pick any one you want, say whatever you want to say about it. In whatever order y'all want to go in. Stephanie, you going first? In-laws, intimacy, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to say which one I'm not going to talk about is somebody push up on my man because I don't want people to think I'm not saved. I can't give a saved answer with that one because it will not be pretty. But I do want to say, when I met Jason, the way he loved on his mom and his grandma was so impressive that I knew I wanted to love on them as well. And so I have a great relationship with my in-laws. Shout out to my father-in-law. He picked the children up from school today so we could do this and took them home and fed them. So the in-law, I say you will see in the beginning what kind of relationship that it's going to happen. And you do not get a pass to be disrespectful to people. If you pursue that relationship, you still need to be a peacemaker. We didn't have that. I don't have that problem. So I just kind of wanted to throw other. Jason, he's going to pick another topic, but I wanted to speak about the in-laws.
Anybody can jump in any order. In-laws, intimacy, boundaries, finances, decision-making, differences of opinion. Go ahead, Jason.
No, if I already got the mic and I can finish, I would pick finances. So for us, we're able, she basically spends the money and I keep up with it. So, yeah, I mean, I keep up with what I got on the side. She has her own separate credit card, but understand that things that we do mutually, we get out of a joint account. And, you know, I've had people ask me over time, like, you know, if we're married, we should have, you know, sometimes they think you should have a joint account, somebody separate. Again, I can't speak for your house. I just know in my house, we got a joint account. You got a little money on the side that you're going to do what you want to do with it, and I'll do the same. And at the end of the day, the main goal is just to make sure that that joint account take care of our house and our family.
It's a good word. I mean, number one cause of conflict in relationships, marriages, right? Finances, right? And so it's important to keep up with it. And so that's a good word. Who's next? In-laws, boundaries, finances, decision-making. Or if something's pressing in you, like I need to get this out for married couples before we end. Somebody else pushing up. While y'all thinking, you ready, Kyle? Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I guess I would say this kind of blends together with difference of opinion and decision making, because I am the dreamer and Danielle is the details down to earth. Like even with our business, I show up, we have a good time taking pictures, and she's making sure people get emails, contracts, and all that kind of stuff. Because if me, you wouldn't get nothing back. And so with decision making and difference of opinions, I have learned that I am very strong minded, right? I know what I think about a lot of things and I stand firm in them. And so with that idea, like Danielle's very much so like she knows what she feels and what she wants. She don't want to have a conversation with you about it. You can go think and feel that over there because I know what I'm doing, right? And so I've learned over time that I cannot be like overbearing when sharing my opinion. When we have a decision that we're trying to come to as a family, if it's just, even we're just having a general conversation, if I come in strong and loud and firm, she's like, well, I'm not going to argue, not because I'm bending to your will, but I'm just not going to argue with you. And so figuring out the balance of how to communicate those things, and again, comes to communication styles, comes to knowing that if the other person is more chill and you're, you need to bring it down so that they feel safe in sharing their opinions. I think that that's the key, is like creating the safe space so that the other person doesn't feel shut out. And then also knowing that the other person feels heard. Because if we're making decisions as a family and I don't actually hear her full heart and her full voice, or if I feel she shut me out and I haven't spoken my full heart and full voice, but then a decision is made, one of us is going to be feeling some type of way later on. I also realize that I am a type of person who's very much so like, I'll go with the flow. Like, what are we going to eat for dinner? I really don't care. I can find anything on any menu. Danielle needs to find somewhere that has chicken. And so when she asks me, what do you want? I say, you just make a decision and then I'll go. But if you ask me and then I have to make a decision and then you don't like it, I'm like, why did you even ask me my opinion? Just tell me what you want and I'm cool with going with it. And I learned recently about myself that I can be so go with the flow that I sometimes started to feel like, oh, you're just making all the decisions. But it's really me just not voicing my opinion. And then when I do have something, I'm like, oh no, I want this, and you don't say yes to it, then I'm like, oh, so you just want to run everything, because I've been so go with the flow this whole time. And so knowing myself, knowing how I work, making sure that we are actually communicating our differences of opinion well, clearly, and in safe spaces so that when decisions are made, they can be something that represents the whole and not just one over the other. But also realize that sometimes you need to say, yes, that's okay, because it's just not that big a deal, even if it's a different decision than what you would have made.
I want to add to that. And I think like a big thing that Kyle said is know yourself, know how you communicate and how you think and how you process things. Because if you jump into something and you don't really know what you feel or what your opinion is, then you're just going to end up with a mess. So with us, we have, over the years, we've both really learned how we communicate, and we do in a very similar way, actually, which I think is a big reason we've never had an argument, because we think the same way, we process the same way. We don't, like I say, there's no flying off the handle in our house, because if we get upset about something, we're both like, hey, I'm feeling some type of way. I don't know why. I don't really understand it. Give me a few minutes. I need to think. I need to figure out why I feel this way. Then I'll come back to you. We both do that. Now, that doesn't work for everybody because everybody doesn't process that way. So the big thing is you need to learn about you and how you process and how you communicate, and that will help the other person then figure out how to communicate with you. So that works well for us.
And the last thing I'll say is that you need to learn how to honor the other person's process. I think that one of the big disservices of marriage is that you've told me how you function, you told me what buttons not to hit, and I'm going to ignore it anyway because I'm feeling some type of way. Because later on you're going to have to go back and apologize or work it out anyway. So go ahead and honor all of who that person is as much as you can, because we all be having our emotions from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, I use the expression that each person deserves the dignity of their process. And I would encourage couples, whatever that process is, to use it. So other hot topics.
I'm going to tackle the intimacy because it is an area of opportunity for me. And I only say that because when the kids were growing up, when the kids were in the house, we could hide behind them, because we got to go to this, we got to go to that. And now the kids, where they at when you need them? And so I've got nothing now. And so what I found is I've been lacking in this area. And she's been telling me this for years, but I didn't hear it. I'm like, really? And so when I wrote the letters, it just reminded me of what I had not been doing. I'm not the most romantic guy. I'm not the, sweep off her feet, take on a picnic to City Lake and spread out the blanket and got a meal and rose, and that's not me, right? So I have to figure out what is me. So lots of resources on the internet, so I get some help. I will not lie to you. I get some help. I'm not asking her, all the time, but I'm going in just researching ways to help me figure out what I can do to meet that need for her. I'm not touchy-feely. She could go all week and not tell me she loves me. I'm good. I'm good. I know she loves me, but she needs something sweet from me. And when she would ask me, tell me something sweet, and I would cringe because I'm like, I got nothing. and I have to think. But I say, yeah, you do have something. You just gotta dig down there and get it. And so, but I said, no, light bulb came on. If I write the letters, if I get her a card, if I leave her something in her car, that fixes that. That takes care of it. And so doing the little things that really challenge me, that are not a natural part of me, but that's something she requires, is probably the biggest area of opportunity for me right now, which is why I said, let's go ahead. I didn't go to the sex thing. I stayed with the PG, with the intimacy part. But it is an area that I am needing to improve and wanting to improve. And I commit to you in front of all these people that I will continue to improve for you.
That's a good word, man. That's a good word. And so before the next person goes, one of the things I say to couples all the time is that when you stop working at it, it stops working. And I think the years you've been married, and yet you're saying, you know what, I still need to work at this. And I would encourage couples to just not stop working at it. Whatever it is, keep it working. So, Keisha.
When we were talking and having conversation, I know I didn't marry Mr. Romantic, but I married Mr. Security. And kind of like Stephanie said earlier, I didn't realize the stability and the foundation for me. Because no, I don't have the how can I help you wife, but I have a husband that keeps me grounded and a husband that pushed me towards excellence and to fulfilling my goals. So I got what I need. And so when we were saying difference of opinions, Eric and I have nothing in common. Outside of our love for God, our love for each other, and we birthed some children. We know this was God ordained because he says hot, I say cold. He says up, I say down. We just laugh because we try to find stuff, but it works. It works, and we understand my strengths are his weaknesses. His weaknesses are my strengths, and so we have just figured out how to knit them together. And so instead of us fighting to find what about that? We've just figured it out. He's going to think the opposite of what I think. If he's going to want to do. And so what we had to learn early on, because that can make some really tough spaces. So if I had to add our word, it would be commitment. Because I remember times when marriage was hard and it was tough. And I remember saying, are we going to be okay? And he looked right at me and said, we ain't got no choice. So we're going to, and grabbed my feet and gave me a foot rub. He's like, look, I know you like that. How about I'm going to fix this right now? And kind of like Kyle and Danielle, they haven't had an argument. I can say that too because he doesn't argue. But I didn't, because it takes two. I didn't say I didn't have mine, Angela. I didn't say I didn't try to go hard, but he doesn't argue. His response is, bae, we want the same thing. How do you argue with that? We want the same thing. Let's identify what we want. And I'm like, no, I want to fuss about it. Let's talk about it. Let's deep dive it. Let's, how do we prevent this? What's the plan? How do we get here? No, baby. We want the same thing. Then he'll hug me because he knows I like to be hugged, and it's done. So for us to not focus on all the things that make us different, because it was a movie I heard, the things that make you different are what make you dangerous. And so the differences that we have are what makes us dangerous to darkness. Because when we get unified and we bring those strengths and those weaknesses together, there ain't a devil in hell that can prevail. And so instead of fighting those differences, embracing them and figuring out how God can use them and get the glory, and let's go take new territory. So
it's a good word. Purposes. Anything jump out in these topics, in-laws, intimacy, boundaries, finance, decision-making, anything like that? Or something you just want to jump in on?
I think for us, all the areas kind of intertwine together because we try to work together on all situations because we know that it is not going to just affect one of us, but the entire family. So when it comes to finances, we talk about the money, where the money is going, how we're going to spend the money. It's not his decision, it's not my decision, it's our decision. Because most of the time with the finances, we have a goal that we're trying to reach for the finances. The same goes with our decision making. We make decisions based on what will best benefit our family. And sometimes self just has to take a back seat. I'm not always happy. He is the, on the ground, and I'm like, okay, how high can I go? And you have to have a person that will set those boundaries, but we agree on them together. So I can say, oh, okay, so I got a good $1,000 that I can just go below. But I know beyond that, we got to have a discussion. Most of the time it ain't that high, but the less kid stuff you have to do, the more stuff you get to do. So that's kind of how we roll.
So did we all catch the link, the relationship between no kids at home and disposable income? We did catch that link, right? And so when you're not spending on the kids, you can go on your little spree.
It makes a difference. But I will say, we are yin and yang in many ways. We really are. People, you just don't know. But we're really different, and we complement each other. And I will say for her that she is an entrepreneur. She does not mind working to get something she wants. So she will go out if she wants something, because I am the numbers person, and I am going to stick to the budget. And so if she doesn't like that, she will find entrepreneurship. She will earn. I say, well, that's yours, because it's not our joint money. So I will compliment her that. But I wanted to say, being yin and yang, especially within our in-laws, and I want to combine those boundaries, because it's so important for us. When we first got married, I have said for decades, and I say it again today, I think I have the sweetest, and I don't know if some people might want to challenge me, the sweetest mother-in-law on this earth. And she was so loving from the first day I met her, intentionally taking me to her home to this very day. And it has made such a huge difference in my life, and all of my in-laws, we get along well. My family just love her, think outside of Jesus she can walk on water. And sometimes I'll be like, you just don't know. But they just love her. But for me, it has made a huge difference, because when we have had, we've had some disagreements, because we don't argue either. And I tell people that in counseling, it takes two to argue. And I'm not an arguer. I'm not going to argue. Now, she might want to express herself. She can express it by herself. But she has learned years ago, he's just not going to feed into this, so she doesn't even try it anymore. But because of that, my mother-in-law and my in-laws are so supportive, but we had to establish boundaries. That's where that word comes. After a few months, I had to establish some boundaries. I love them. If they see this, I love y'all. But I had to we had to come together as a couple, as one. And I had to establish some boundaries as well as her, because if not, then I think sometimes people forget that we are first. And even in their best efforts, sometimes they forget they're no longer, they left mom and dad, they left them, and they need to cleave to their spouse. But we had to understand through those boundaries, we can still love our families and our in-laws, but there are some boundaries, and sometimes that just created a more positive atmosphere for us in the long run, because if we hadn't, I'm not so sure I would be able to say I just love my in-laws like I do.
So as we round up, because we're out of time, and this has been so helpful, and thank y'all very much. I hope those of you that are watching online will type in how much you appreciate these couples. Put your clap hands emojis in and clap hands for them. I want to give anyone any opportunity, if you have something burning that you really want to, in 30, 45 seconds, get out. I want to give you the opportunity to do that very quickly if anyone feels that. And then I want to end with the purposes, with an issue around counseling. When should a couple seek marriage counseling? So anyone, before they answer that question, have anything, one last 30, 45-second spiel. Kyle, go.
Quick spiel. Mine's about sex and intimacy. And so one, y'all, it ain't that deep. Movies and romantic comedies have told us that everything needs to be super sweet, super kind, have to have tons of foreplay and all this kind of stuff. Like one, yeah, have your moments. I'm sorry, wait, PG. All right, so have your moments and like do your thing, but y'all also realize that life happens, kids happen. If you got to go in there and like, get the thing done and then jump on out, do what you got to do. But at the same time, be purposeful about understanding that it is not going to always be what it was the first time and the second time. Well, all those things. So like, I'm trying to, So I would say that because when it comes to finances, I think the other big issue that a lot of marriages have is like how you feel about each other in those intimacy moments. And when you go a little bit and it's been a while, does that mean that you're no longer attracted to me? Is someone else pushing up on you? And to hit that question is, if someone's pushing up on my spouse, what is my spouse pushing back? Are they rubbing back? What's all those things? And so I would say, don't think that it has to be as deep, not just sex, but marriage. It's not that deep. It's two people figuring life out together. It's not always going to be fun. It's not always going to be easy. It's not going to be romanticized. It's going to be life. And so jump into it, be open and having conversations how it's going to change, and make sure that it lasts. But it only lasts if you're willing to work to make it last together.
That's a good word. Anything pressing? Keisha, and then I'm going to get Stanley Purvis about counseling.
I just want to encourage people to get serious about stewarding the season, because they change so quickly. You can get so caught up in the season. This is what we do. This is how we've always done it. But as lives change, seasons change, as you age, as the family dynamics change, stay close to God and let him teach you how to steward that season with your spouse, and be open to changing, because you do have to be flexible. You got to be fluid. And it can't be the way it was 25, 30 years ago. What's our now season? What's our now moment? What does now romance look like? What does now dating look like? And get excited about that. Fuel that, and just decide quitting is not an option.
Quitting is not an option.
That was a great lead in, understanding seasons. And that is so important for couples, because a lot of times when those seasons change, and those who struggle with change, then they find themselves in a very dire situation. And a lot of times they feel like, I just don't know what to do. And they'll just shut down. So this is what counseling does. It allows you to come into a neutral place and voice those concerns with some help to help guide you through those challenging times, those difficult seasons. And understanding that your spouse is an individual. You didn't marry yourself. You married your spouse, and you all are individuals, and no two people are alike. And with the changing of seasons throughout life, understanding that that person is not me, and accepting differences. And that's been one of the huge challenges, couples not knowing how to accept the differences that occur over time. But most importantly, knowing that through all of that, there is help. And as she said, you don't have to quit. It may be hard, and most of the time it is hard, but you need to know there is help for you and support for you throughout the process, but it is a process.
Listen, y'all been awesome. I will end on this note. I believe that the most important decision you can make is receiving Christ. And I used to say the second most important decision was who you're going to marry. I think the second most important decision is deciding to stay married. And so I would encourage couples to recommit to your marriage, recommit to what God is doing, and to invest at least as heavily in the marriage as you did the wedding. So much effort goes into the wedding. And what's going to really matter is the effort that's going to go into the marriage. So again, would you join me in thanking all of our couples for being here today? I celebrate all of them. Comment on this. I hope it was a blessing to you. I hope you'll share it many, many times over. And again, thanks for joining. Have a great day.